I'm Ariana Grande.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Erivo.
And you're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Visit bpn.fm to discover more.
There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today we have an amazing guest. She has been in 2 different productions of Cats, including playing Grizabella in the 2007 U.S. tour. So welcome, Tricia Tanguy, and thank you for joining me.
Hello, everyone. How are we?
I love talking to Grizabellas because you're the thesis of my entire podcast, and we'll get there. But I want to start with I love starting with Cats history because I feel like there's a wide range of everyone who saw it growing up or saw the DVD or the VHS or some level of something way before I was introduced to it in my life. So I'd love to hear kind of when you were introduced to the show and kind of what were your thoughts?
Oh my gosh. Well, I just have to say that honestly, this show has like everyone, it's crazy that I was actually born the same year that the original company opened on Broadway in 1983. So there you go, everyone. I'm 37 years old. So right away, that just to me was always a really special connection to kind of know we all came into this world at the same exact time. So yeah, I think like a lot of kids that end up being in theater, I was obsessed with music and Disney and all those things. And so with Cats in particular, I guess I probably definitely saw the video, of course, the VHS that we all kind of iconically remember and think of, those of us that are old enough to know the VHS version. So I think I definitely did that. And I'm sure I was leaping around my living room and dancing to it and just in utter awe and just out of the beauty of it all and just what a spectacle it was. So, but then the first time I did this was when I was on the tour in 2007, 2008. I definitely never in my mind had originally thought, I could definitely see myself doing Cats. But then when I was on another tour the year before, and then I saw that they were actively seeking replacements for the tour in 2007, I thought, oh my gosh, well, why not? Wow, what an iconic show. What an iconic role. Of course, like, why wouldn't I allow myself the opportunity to go in for something like that? So that's when I went in for the audition. And from the moment I walked in the door on that first day of rehearsal, I knew what an immense it was such a thing to do out of respect, and just it's an amazing torch to carry,
Yeah.
So I never doubted that for a second, and I was always so proud, and it was such an honor to do that. So I think of anything, that's the one thing I've always really cherished about Cats is knowing what a legacy it became, and that all of us who have kind of been in some way, shape, in any way, shape, or form, whether you've done it locally in a regional or community theater production, or if you've done it on a tour in a different country or on Broadway, it doesn't matter, that there's this really special essence about Cats that really makes it unique and beautiful. So
it is like it's a big Jellicle family that I've heard that from a few people. That's like I don't want to call it fraternity but it's like it's a family. It's like you've been through the same thing together, and there's like the experience, and it's an experience. But so you don't have a visceral memory of seeing it as a kid or anything. It's just like, you kind of came in for the audition knowing about it. You knew you'd seen it, but it wasn't like I saw it when I was 10, or I have like this exact memory of when and where.
No, and that's a sad thing because I was such a theater kid. I was obsessed with theater. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and we always used to go and see the national tours when they came through. And I would sit on the edge of my seat. I mean, like my mom has this glorious story of me when Peter Pan came through. I stood up at intermission and I literally threw out my arms and I went, "I'm flying." And I almost took out the woman next to me, and my mom grabbed my arm. She goes, "Sweetie, you almost smacked her in the face. Sit down. We'll talk when we get home." So I just always loved theater, and it almost makes me wonder, like, I wonder what I would have been like as a kid having had that live Cats experience, because I'm sure it would have been so magical. And luckily I've had that. I've seen how kids respond, and it's such a special gift that we get to give, and we see how we're impacting especially little kids. It's so cool.
It's cool that you've gotten to see that, because I've said a lot in this podcast that I don't think it's for children. And it's because I think I've analyzed this way too deep. And I know more about like the potential backstory of what these things are, like abusive relationships, potential sex work, an orgy is the ball. Like these themes are probably not kid friendly, but then at the same time, now I'm starting to slowly come around to like, if you just ignore that and just watch it, it can bring the joy. So it's kind of interesting to hear you say that.
Oh, for sure. Well, and two, I think it's become such a generational piece. You know, like I said, the show started in it started in 1983. So at this point, you know, even in my age range, people who grew up being kids and seeing the show, now they're coming with their parents and their children. And you have 3 generations of people sitting in that row who all have some magical connection with the show or don't, and they're experiencing it for the first time. So it is really neat to know that there are very few shows, I think, that really bridge that gap between the generations, and that a whole family can go and sit and have some kind of a great experience at. And I think this is and again, it's one of the things that I think has given this show longevity. It's something that makes the show really special and unique. And cats will never die. It's true. I mean, it's true. They'll never die.
They'll go the heaviside layer and be reborn. But no, it's very true, because my first time seeing it was in 2016 as an adult. You know, I was also born in the 80s, but did not grow up as a theater kid, did not go I went to the touring productions in the Midwest as well, but definitely wasn't this like on my radar or anything. It was just like, we went and we saw The Lion King and we saw these things as they came through. But when I went, I think I was almost just as fascinated as I was a little horrified as that kids were around me, because I was like terrified when Green Eyes came through, and like as an adult. But then I kept like looking around. There was a lot of international tourists that were there, and I was like, this is the right show to see if you like, you know, if English isn't your first language or you don't really even understand the language. You don't need to really follow the show, because I understand language and didn't follow the show for a while. Still have researched it and recorded 30 plus episodes on this, and still not sure I could say I followed the show. But I kind of do love that. So you auditioned in 2007. You land the role of Grizabella. So what were you told? I love to hear, what were you told about her character?
Yeah, well, I, again, will say I feel fortunate that even in 2007, I was doing the tour. I was working with Richard Stafford, who was the dance supervisor for the Broadway company and had been in the original Broadway company as Skimbleshanks, and then also to cover Mistopheles. And then Kristen Blodgett was my musical supervisor, who is, you know, the second to Andrew Lloyd Webber. You know, everything he touches, she works on. So at that age, I was 24 playing Grizabella. And here I was working with Kristen Blodgett and having one-on-one coachings with her, you know. So, and then fast forward again to the Revival company and then the national tour, and I'm working with Kristen again. So I feel very fortunate that I was very close with them, knowing that they were really close to the original material, so that it wasn't, you know, because however you look at cats, it can kind of almost be put through a filter in a way, because I don't want to say watered down, because that's a bad way that seems like it's negating it. But in a way, the more hands it passes through, the less authentic it can seem. I guess I don't want to dumb it down, but you know what I mean? As it passes down, it can become less of what the original intention was, right?
It's a game of telephone for sure.
Right. Oh, for sure. So I was like, wow. So here I am working with the Kristen Blodgett and Richard Stafford giving me this material. Holy cow. But again, a set of 24-year-old ears was hearing it. And a 24-year-old who, at that point in my life, yes, I'd lived through things, but it wasn't the same as fast forward when I was 36 and seeing it now through those eyes and that lived experience. So, and again, this, you know, malleable way of finding moments that we, of course, all learn when we go to school. If you go to school for theater and acting, like finding, even if you haven't lived through it yourself, finding things within it that is going to bring the reality to you, so that through you, you're bringing the most sincere performance and reality to the people who are living through this in a living, breathing theater experience. So yeah, so with Grizabella, you know, it was like knowing really for her, just channeling like what is it that she's been through? Like, how does it, you know, how does she have strength knowing that when she enters a room, everyone, not only do they turn their back, but they're aggressive, they're nasty, they don't like her, they don't want her there. And how much courage and strength that takes to be able to walk into a room like that. And I think they're in some, even whether it's a big or small way, I think a lot of us have been in those positions, you know, that we can relate, where you've walked into a room and you haven't necessarily, you're like, oh, I don't know anybody at this party, I feel kind of strange, I should leave. Or you come in and say, you know what, I'm going to have fun regardless. I'm coming in because I have every right to be here. Right. So I think at 24, that's kind of where, you know, finding her quiet strength that she has of knowing that she did have every right to be in there simply because she exists. And so being able to come into the space and allowing that, and then again, like not feeling like it was, she had to be so tough, but just knowing that she was enough. So I think that's always been a really interesting side, and keeping with, I don't want to say her humanity because she is a cat, but that human trait that we can relate to.
Yeah. And you know, there's so many layers to the show. And I like love hearing that, and like the thought behind that of like the emotional connection to what Grizabella is bringing to the story. And then here I am looking at it being like, what happened? Like where did she go before she came back? And less about the emotional connection to it and more about like, why did she leave?
What's her backstory?
And what's her backstory? And that's how I've like looked at every character. And then from the lens I've kind of taken. And so I've always been fascinated by like what you've been told about it. And if you're not told anything, it's just like, hey, here's the emotional connection of like what you should be feeling. Ultimately, what I am curious is, were you ever given that backstory, or were you given more of the emotional pieces of like how to play the character, but not necessarily like, this is why Grizabella left and here's where she went and here's where she's coming back? Because I have theories, but I've always been curious if there's an answer to my theories.
Oh, yes and no. I mean, I have this wonderful voice memo recording that I'm wishing I had listened to it today, because I haven't listened to it in a while, because I'd love to have it fresh in my head. But Chrissy Cartwright, who was Gillian Lynn's assistant, who's brilliant. She's from England. She's wonderful. We worked with her with the Revival tour. And I really was fortunate to sit in the room with her while she worked with Kara Renee Fuller, me, and Maria, who was the other cover with me. And we sat there and just got to watch Chrissy talk through memory and her entrance all the way through. And I just was like, pull out your voice memos, Tricia, take it out, record this right now. So I have a little voice memo, and just kind of, you know, this idea of her, like, you know, she has every ounce of strength she needs just to walk through the room. So that's why her pace is very slow. It's almost like she's walking on eggshells, because every step she takes is guarded and painful and difficult. And she's reserving every ounce of strength that she can. So, and I mean, she talks through the whole thing about, you know, just, and she would coach us through, like, as we were singing, she would kind of like throw in little things to us to kind of take in as we continue to do the material. So that was amazing. But what's interesting is we would do that, but then when we would go through a run through and we did it another way, we didn't always have to do it exactly, because what was most important was living in that moment, depending on what we were given. Because again, it's live theater. And you know what? Today, I might glance over and Tugger might be really giving me some nasty eyes today. And that can inform what I'm about to do. Or I could look over and see a real gentleness with Old Deuteronomy and Victoria that I hadn't seen in that capacity before. And that can inform the moment. So that's the beauty and the living, breathing nature of this piece, is that it can change, and we have that flexibility and that capacity to let it breathe and to change, and to not obviously night and day, like things aren't going to change, but it really helps keep the show fresh. So one thing, so 2007, when I did it, one thing that I specifically played with that specific company was the fact that probably Grizabella and Munk are the parents of Victoria.
Okay. Yeah. So there's,
yeah.
I don't know. Sure. I've never heard Munk, but that makes sense. Or maybe it's, you know, there's a lot of dotted lines with the cat's family tree.
No, for sure.
And so, but the Victoria being your daughter is seems right.
Right. And especially because I did listen I loved listening into your episode with Adam. It was awesome. It made me miss him just hearing his voice. But yeah, so I listened in. I was like, you know what? It's true. And his thing about Syllabub, I thought that was really an interesting take that I hadn't thought about previously, that she's the one that always sings with her. But I don't know. I think, again, it comes back with Victoria because she's all white. That's that symbolic form of purity. And that she, in her purest form, would be the first one to open her heart and her eyes to Grizabella and be the first one to welcome her home and to touch her. And so that has always been like, of course, and again, furthering the notion that that's her daughter on top of it, especially if she doesn't know. So I always really loved that because, oh man, when you put your hand out and then you feel that touch, like it, knowing this is my daughter, this is my baby, you have that like release like no other. It's crazy. So I always, again, why would Munk be so protective and the first one to be so guarded and protective when Grizabella enters the space? Why is he, of course, always looking to Old Doot for, to verify that he should be doing this, but also the first one to be like the first to protect the kittens. And I think it deepens it if that's actually his daughter with her. Right. Yeah. So, for sure. And then that always really infused our connection, the Monk and I, when I was on that tour. It really helped our dynamic on stage so much. And then on this other one that I just did, it was really interesting because Andy Blankenbuehler, when he came in and kind of put his spin on things, I was very fortunate that I worked with Andy previous to this. I did the Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat tour. So just having that amazing opportunity to kind of really be in a room with all the time and to see how his brain works and how he loves to infuse pieces and work on things and where he comes from. So then when he put his spin on Cats, dropping into Cats that I already knew, but now with an Andy twist, for me was like ding, 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 ding. I loved it so much. So just knowing how he always creates an atmosphere with not the person who's currently in the center of the stage in the spotlight. Andy shows, no matter what it is, Hamilton, In the Heights, our Joseph tour, Cats, it doesn't matter, Bandstand, all of them. He always uses the ensemble to inform what's happening with the main person who's on stage. So if you want to know at any given moment, how does this ensemble feel about the person who the song is about? All you have to do is look at the ensemble because he uses them to do all of the storytelling in that moment. So he really did that especially with all the Grizabella moments, with using their, using all of them, like all the movements that are there and just their body language. And, we weren't really supposed to be hissing a lot in this show. He was really kind of anti, all of the verbal hissing because he wanted our bodies and our postures and all of that to inform things rather than any kind of audible sound. So I just thought it was awesome. And I really think that he kind of helped really take that another layer deeper in the storytelling with Griz in particular. Yeah.
And what's fascinating about that is that when you look at the Wikipedia, there's a Cats Wikipedia page, like a fan Wikipedia page that has a lot of like rumors and all kinds of stuff. There's like 4,000 pages or more. It's mostly centered, a lot of it is based off of 2016, the revival. But if you try to go, if you're me, who saw that performance twice and no other variation of Cats ever live, all of the things I can go reference are the VHS. And that's mostly it, because that's what's on YouTube. That's what's you can buy. Like that's where you can go find a copy of this. And so it's interesting. Like I would love to be able to go back and watch the 2016 version, knowing the information I know now about just the story in general, and these things I've picked up talking to your tour cast and the 16 cast, and I'm talking to some of the cast from the 80s tour, like how this all fuses together, because I think there's so much. And I've interviewed a few fans who go to watch like one Cat the whole way through, or go to like pull through the other pieces. I was so mesmerized the first time. I had no idea what was happening. And then the second time I was a little intoxicated because I knew better the second time. And I was ready to like just enjoy the experience. but I'd still constantly was being like, ooh, this was happening and this was there. And I had no idea that was happening. I don't remember this from the first time. And maybe they changed it. Like maybe it was different than the first time. And so I feel like there's something that next time I see this show live, I'm going to be like very much more in tune to a lot of these things. I don't think I can go see as easily because the videos even kind of jump cut around in parts where I can't see what that person's doing or that cat's doing.
Yeah, of course. I know. It's always, I know it's the same thing. Like when any show gets put onto film, you know, it's because through that lens, we're being told what we're supposed to watch. Right. But when you sit in a theater, you can look anywhere. Sometimes I just turn around. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to check out what the conductor's doing right now. Oh, they're cueing the, you know, offstage vocalist. I love it. You know, so you can just kind of tune in wherever you want. So
that was bad for me. The last thing I saw before was I saw Diana, and I ended up with someone we had tickets from a work thing, and I ended up in the very first row behind the conductor, and I barely watched the show because I watched the conductor the whole time because I was just fascinated by that whole experience because it's not something I normally get to see. Being like right now, I mean, literally behind him. And just
the best seat in the house.
Experience, I was like, this is nuts. Like it's kind of a wild ride for that. And just seeing everything queuing and just stuff that I'm not a theater person. I don't sing, I don't dance. I didn't do theater growing up. I was not in plays even in elementary school because I played sports and like I couldn't do the rehearsals. And so I just didn't do them. So seeing all this stuff to me is just like, it's foreign. It's like totally like, I can't even fathom it, which is why I enjoy it so much.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you're doing this too, because it's really awesome to like have you're so respectful of what all of us do and the industry and what the impact is. So it's awesome. So thank you. If you don't hear that enough, you should. So thank you for all that you're doing. Yeah.
As much as I've poked fun at the story, which I still have big gripes with the story. I still think the way the story was written, I disagree with. But it doesn't change the fact that and it's such a polarizing show. It doesn't change the fact that to anybody who hates the show, and there are those people that hate it, it's like, it's still one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. Like the stage is absurdly detailed and really cool set design. Half the dancing, I was just like, I just recently learned that the stage is slanted. And I was like, so I can't even imagine doing it flat, let alone doing some of these moves on a slanted floor. It's like all these things that are coming through. It's like, it's still watching the peak performers doing an incredibly difficult thing. And so I have total respect for that. I still totally disagree with the story.
Well, I was going to ask you, do you know about the whole Jellicle cats, like how that came up? Have you heard that before?
So I know it comes from the poems.
Okay, but why it's Jellicle? Like what that kind of breaks down? Okay.
Someone might have. Thing is at this point I've been told so much and I don't know what's real, what's fake. And I still kind of stick into my lane that Grizabella shouldn't have died at the end. And that's my take. So someone might have educated me on this and I might just be forgetting it. So I apologize if I've already talked to I keep thinking the Fabulous Invalid guys, they told me all kinds of stuff and it was like so overwhelming because they just know so much about theater. So, but tell me, let's hear it.
Well, we saw a video that they played for us from Andrew Lloyd Webber on our first day of rehearsal for the revival tour. So they basically said that as little children, they used to say, "Dear little cats, dear little," and then that kind of like developed into Jellicle, like dear little, like. So that's where Jellicle cats came from. Isn't that fun? So it was like,
that's
okay,
simple.
Dear little cats. Yep.
Sure. and then a lot of it's based on the poem there. And then the poem of Grizabella is not in the book.
Nope. That is a completely separate poem that he found and then realized, wow, this is really beautiful. I should set this to music. And it is such a stunning poem and so beautifully written. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad that day happened for you and that you made it a song because here we are.
Yeah.
You know?
But what's wild is that poem was not in the book because T.S. Eliot thought it was too dark for children. And that is like the rationale. So again, that's part of my evidence of why children, I think, shouldn't see it. But it's interesting to me that's like, again, the creation of the show is we took this one thing, put it into the rest, made some tweaks. I did not criticize, but I called out all the different differences between the songs and the poems, and found some pockets of where it was like some change. There's a couple changes there I'm just like, he didn't need to make. And then there are plenty where I'm like, okay, that makes sense to cut out. Mm-hmm. But I still look at it, and as someone who likes sitcoms, as someone who likes like clear cut beginning, middle, end, conflict resolution type of thing, mm-hmm. still have like struggle with the show. And that's why, like, to me, the writing is like, you can interpret it a million different ways. I love hearing all these things about it, but I'm still going like, yeah, it's a singing competition. And then we kill one at the end, and we kill the one that everyone hated.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't like knowing that your ideas about Grizabella not being the one who should have been chosen. I, especially now, especially with all of the conversations that we're finally having in such mass quantities in this country, this notion of judging a book by its cover, making assumptions and sticking with your first opinion of something, and that how can we come together to be better and be kinder, and without being judgmental. Right. So I think that is inevitably that is the discussion that we've always had, is that the reason, and always why the question, like, well, then why doesn't Old Deuteronomy just pick someone? Why not? Like, he knows who he wants in theory. So why doesn't he just go? Because the show would be 10 minutes, of course. They do the opening number, and then Old Deuteronomy be like, welcome to the Jellicle Ball. Just kidding. I'm picking the cat, and it's the end. We're done, right? So why that? Why the whole show? But I think it's, again, that in a way, to me, it's almost like a parent teaching a child by making them live through an experience rather than just at the beginning saying, you should do this probably. But they're going to make the kid go through all of the several things so that they learn through experience. And to me, that's what Cats completely is about, right? So he's letting everybody live through and to see everyone for who they are and what they present and their best traits and everything. And then in that reminder of, why are we doing this to Grizabella? Why are you doing this to her? Do you completely understand what she's going through, and why would you make assumptions about her? So that's why, rather than him making the choice, he makes it an actual conscious shift for all of the cats on that stage to recognize their own bias feelings and their own things.
Interesting.
So to me, especially now, it's so it's even more relevant. And I'm like, I just want to do Cats now after the pandemic, because it's even more about all of that, and and how much more sacred and special is that.
Interesting. So your take, okay. Now
I really think it should be Grizabella. Still do. I'm sorry.
No.
It's been getting to wear the cute little kitten heels, especially getting to, sing Memory in my, especially in this last version where I had to wear like a belt that was all rigged to fly. Ooh, that was comfy. Not really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is interesting, because I don't think I've heard this version. Everyone has a slight take on it. So from what I'm hearing, you're saying is that Old Deuteronomy knows that Grizabella is his choice before the show starts. It's like, we've decided, but the best way for me to teach the Jellicle tribe a lesson of acceptance and all the, again, all the positive things is I'm going to make everybody tell their story. And then I'm going to showcase the one that like we've been mean to, we've kind of exiled. And that's like the belief of like, that's why she wins. Wins is the wrong word. She dies, right. She wins, like whatever. She's rewarded. But that you're saying Old Deuteronomy knew from day one, and this was not a social experiment, but this was a way to teach. It was a teaching moment. Well,
and I do think in the same vein, it was a social experiment, because instead of him telling them, this is who I'm picking and why, it becomes I'm going to make you see through why this person should be picked. And inevitably you will all pick for the same reason that I already know she's the one who should be picked. Because he knows because that's why he's wise. He's wise. And that's why he is Old Deuteronomy, and he's so well loved, and he's so, he's this magical being, right? Because he has so much wisdom and truth behind what he does. And so everyone respects him. So I think they would respect his choice. But again, it's that he's making the tribe choose. He's making them choose. So that's why at the very beginning, they would have never picked Griz. But that's another thing that when you do see the show again or watch any clip of Cats, and when she starts Memory, they're all at that, when you finish off Misto, he makes the pin spot really small and sends it up. Syllabub sings memory. And then that's when Griz, again, she always enters in the moment where she's least welcome, right? They're always having some big party or they're having a really beautiful, tender moment. And Griz is the catalyst that changes it again. And everybody's like, oh, the buzzkill. Why is Griz here again? Right? So especially in this moment, but this is her last chance. This is her very last chance. And she hasn't presented her story yet. Because if you remember, then the very first act, Little Memory, which comes after the Jellicle Ball, they've all just done this giant celebration. She got shunned during the Jellicle Ball, so she wasn't part of it. She came in, everybody left the stage, and she was left alone, doesn't know that Old Deuteronomy is still there. She thinks she's alone. And that was her chance. And that was when we as an audience member get to see her. The cats don't. We do as the audience. So that was when we connect with her. So then after that, but so again, she still hasn't had her presentational moment, right? To come forth, like Skimbleshanks is gone and Misto's gone and everybody's done worked their magic literally and has done their thing. Griz hasn't yet. Right. So now this is her last chance, because if she doesn't come forth, and that's like the intensity and the driving force behind memory, is that she has to present in this very moment. Otherwise, she will die. She will die. Tonight will be the die. She either will be picked and she'll get another life, or tonight is her last night on the earth. She will die.
So do you think in your theory that Old Deuteronomy knows at the beginning of the show, or it's the little memory that seals it for him?
See, for me, I think, that's a great question. I mean, I feel like you could play with two options. One being that he comes into this Jellicle Ball with maybe like a top 3. And in my mind, I don't know who the third would be. I think in theory, it would be Gus, Griz, and I actually don't know who the third would be. Maybe Jenny Annie? Maybe? But then again, in the revival, she's young and spunky. But in the original, she's older, right? So I don't even know.
Every Jenny I've talked to doesn't feel that they feel that they can go. They feel they have still more they need to be mom there.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So I don't know. So maybe he comes in with top 3, maybe it's like, the finale of American Idol and he's got top 2 or top 3. And now we got to do a sing off and figure it out. So maybe, but I think in that moment in Little Memory, I think that is a turning point for him. And I think that is his okay, she's here. She is trying so desperately and she needs this moment. So even if it's me keeping everybody in check so that she has her moment, which is inevitably how memory starts, like from our end. And I think everyone in the audience does perceive that as well, is, again, it's Griz is here. Everyone puts their guards up. They all come, they retract her. They come up to her. They forcefully are hissing and tell her to go. She fights her way through. She comes in. And in that, so finally, it's when Doot will always usually look to Munk and says, no, over there. And Munk has to step down. And then it is that final moment where Doot looks Griz in the eye and will go ahead. And then she'll take one more step in, and our left foot always usually goes on the eye of the tiger on the stage. So she'll and that is usually when the beginning chord start of memory. And then that's when she starts, because she's being allowed the opportunity, like, the moment is yours. This is your time. Take it. So, and then that's how memory happens. And that's her time to actually finally be a part of it in some weird, in this way. And in that moment, especially in this revival version, I think it was Andy again. I'm not sure. It could be a combination of course, the original with Jillian and Chrissy Cartwright and Andy and everyone. But he made it very distinct that he wanted everybody to be turned away from Griz. Mm-hmm. Everyone's turned away, except for sweet little Victoria, who is very much looking at her and very intrigued. So Old Doot and Victoria are the only eyeballs, like as Grizabella, they're the only eyeballs that you get to see in the beginning. So, and everyone else is turned away. So, and this was one of the things we did in, I know you talked about cat school, but in Felinity school is we had these, okay, now that you know how to move like a cat, now we need to infuse what the story is. Mm-hmm. So knowing your character traits, who do you relate to? Who are your friends? If you're a kitten, who's your best friend? Who's your mom? Who's your cousin? Who's someone you're scared of? Who's someone you really like or you feel nurtured by, right? So knowing these relationships, when Grizabella would sing memory, they said, now I want you to think in your world as your cat, listening to her words, when would be the moment? And it can, it can change every day based on how you feel. Today, how are you feeling? And when is it that you finally are coming to the moment where you can turn around and you want to give her your full attention because you're with her and you get it, or you're intrigued and you want to listen, right? Or you just are finally being a little more forgiving and you're taking the edge off and you can give her your energy, right? So by the end, especially, I believe it's by Touch Me, everybody is facing Griz, right? So again, that notion of like, again, Old Deuteronomy didn't say, okay, everybody shush, you have to listen, strict, you have to listen right now. He just gave her the space. He didn't tell them they had to turn around. You know what I mean? There's nothing and no force. It's everyone having their, I want to say come to Jesus moment, but it's kind of that, where they would come around and everyone finally comes around to this notion of, wow, you're right. We were wrong. She deserves to be listened to. And in that moment, that is when the choice was made. Not even Grizabella's touch. To me, it wasn't Victoria's touch. That's like the physical, icing on the little cherry on top of the sundae that we've made. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's that full physical turning around that in the storytelling is everybody saying, okay, we're sorry. If that's what we need to say is we're sorry, we forgive you. And then just Victoria is the touch. And by then, everyone, the receiving line starts to form at that point. So it was the tribe's decision. So there's that. So
I really like that because it's, there's I've heard a lot of theories. I've heard a lot of versions of this. I did like Adam kind of was the first one to me that really mentioned the only one seeing Griz in Little Memory. I've heard a bunch of other variations of this as well. That's the first time I've heard someone think say that the decision has been made before it started, and this is a lesson, and that's an interesting take on it. I love that you mentioned American Idol because that was my take. I saw Leona Lewis, and I thought I saw the most wild X Factor episode I've ever seen when I walked out of the theater the first time. So I'm very conscious that the majority of my take centers around. I view Old Deuteronomy as a Simon Cowell, and I view every person that had their own song as a performer that gave their choice to go up there, and I'm going to pick the best winner. And I think you can make an argument for Grizabella, especially when you get the great editing and they talk about the redemption story and whatever craziness she went through. But that wasn't my winner. And that's kind of why I've always looked at it from that lens, but I've never looked at it from the lens of Old Deuteronomy already knew there's a lot more already happening, and this is just one day's kind of story to his decision's been made. I looked at it as everyone's going up there, giving their best effort, and then we're going to pick. And Old Deuteronomy is going to pick as the judge. And there was some bias, which is why, I think he picked wrong.
Which I think is, and again, how cool that the show exists in this form so that these conversations can be had, right? It isn't so clear cut. It isn't just one way, or it's not all black and white, right? I think that's what's really, even though that's what the show logo is with some yellow eyes, it's ironic, right? So it's really cool. And again, every version is what makes them unique, and it's all about the relationships within the show. And
there's more too. I mean, there's just so many other layers to it that I've uncovered of like, if these two people were friends off stage as performers, then their cats might become closer, even though that might not be as a traditionalist version of it. And that's like, I think also kind of fun. I know there's some people, some super fans are not big on that. It's like, no, you didn't play that the way it's supposed to. But I personally like that. Like, I like the nuance to that of like, it's fun. And 99% of the people in the theater aren't going to notice, or like they're not going to pick up on that, which is what gives you as performers also some creative like space to make it so 8 shows a week isn't 8 shows a week. There's some fun with it.
Oh, especially too, it's always so interesting when you remember, what the show was especially when a long running production of this, right? Like the shows go on for like years and years. So when you think of how the show started and how it kind of ebbs and flows and blossoms and changes as it goes. And again, the knowing that as long as we're all safe, and that's one thing we've always talked about, things can change, things can slightly adjust, but as long as everyone is safe and no one's filling out accident reports because of changes, then let's just say, like, be smart and be courteous and be, keep within the context of the show. But again, it does have that wiggle room, that breathing room. And in a way, that's what really does help keep it, even though, oh my gosh, I have so much respect for all of the dancers in the show, because physically the show is epic. And to say, to keep it fresh, like, I don't know how some of them do it 8 shows a week. They're unbelievable, so whatever it is, because their physical game, they are doing that, but then also whatever they need to do to keep their mental game alive and fresh so that their physical self can keep going. Bless them. Keep it going. Work your magic. Keep making it happen.
That was my biggest takeaway when I was kind of poking fun at the show, and then I was talking to people that like hated it. I'm like, yeah, but like, did you watch it? I was like, some of that dancing. I was like, some of that dancing was crazy. Like, I mean, I was like, that is a skill. That is a talent that most people don't have.
Yes.
And so to me, I was like, you can hate the show, the plot, all that stuff, all you want, but to be able to do those dancing, and then to be able to do the dancing and sing, and be on stage all the time, and be able
to do your makeup plot,
and be
artistic too,
and be running through the crowd. I mean, I was just like, it physically looked like one of the most impressive feats I've ever seen on Broadway, and that's why I was like, I can criticize to an extent, but at the same time, like, I also was beyond impressed on a lot of pieces of it.
Oh, I'm so glad you like it so much. Well, obviously we're here talking about it. So.
I now have know way more than I ever expected to about the show when I started. But here we are. And so let's do some rapid fire, because we've now already answered my last question. So we've dug deep into, was Grizabella the right or wrong choice? So I feel good about that. I'm glad we covered it. But let's do some quick ones. I like asking this question. I'm kind of tweaking this question now, because I always just say, who would you want to play another character in the show? But I like to say, who would you want to play, ignoring male, female, ignoring if it's like in your vocal range, ignoring if it's like you're not this, like, just if you could play any track, ignoring could you actually do it or not? Which one would you really want to do?
It's a tie, because Jenny has always been like the sweetest, cutest thing. I've always loved that track and everything it is. It's motherly, it's fun, it's playful, it's all the things. And I think that's just because that checks a lot of boxes for Tricia in terms of like, I can be myself on stage. But Skimbleshanks, I love Skimbleshanks. I think he's so cute. Yeah.
So you picked the tap. You like the tap numbers.
Yeah, I do. And I'm so glad that they made it a tap number for the movie. I thought it was so cute. I've always said, why isn't this a tap number? I love it. Skimble's so much fun. So I would have to say tied for the two of those. Or I would want to be the Foy person who makes Griz fly, because I had never flown previous to doing the revival. And I told you the Peter Pan story early, I was obsessed with onstage flying, or just flying in general. So when I got to fly for the first time, I remember just hugging the techs like so hard. I was like, I love this so much. Thank you for making me Tinkerbell today. So anyway, if I couldn't be on stage, then I would want to be the Foy person.
It is your full circle moment for you.
It really was.
Seeing the show and getting to fly. What about favorite song of the show?
Oh, a favorite song. I love Old Deuteronomy. Is that wild to say? But I also like Moonlight, because the little moonlight, turn your face to the moonlight, right? Mm-hmm. That was horrible. Don't edit that. Edit it out.
That's definitely staying in. That is not getting cut.
Oh, great. Awesome. So I love that, because again, it keeps coming around, and each time you hear it, it just, you kind of sink your teeth in more, and it just deepens its meaning as to why it's in the show. So I do like that. It's like the little sprinkling of fairy dust throughout the show. But I really love Old Deuteronomy. There's just something about the orchestration, and like there was this one, the underscoring, like when I was in the booth, there's this one section of the ooze that we'd sing in 4-part harmony, and it was just so warm and lush. It's just like holding a cup of tea and a cozy sweater on a cold day. It just warmed my soul, and I think something about that is just it. It's just such a big hug within the show that you, in that moment, I think we all need before it becomes playful and fun. And, you know, because everyone loves Tugger and that's such a fun, energetic number. And the opening is great. And, you know, everything serves its purpose. But in that moment, it's just that nice, warm hug and the celebration. And it's beautiful, too. And the full company sings together. Yeah. That's another one. Griz isn't on stage. But when you think about like really full company singing like this really lush number, that's one of them. And I really do like it for that reason.
That's awesome. What about favorite and least favorite character?
Oh, least favorite character. I mean, McCavity, I know we have to have conflict, but I also just feel for that track because he's like having to do all of the things Plato McCavity. Oh my gosh, bless them all. They just between costume changes and what's physically demanding, and it's just so much. It's fun, but again, for me, if I want to bring kids to a show, I'd be like, oh, McCavity is a little scary, and I don't want them to be scared, but they have to be. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, McCavity's great. Favorite characters, though, I've always thought Bomb is just such an awesome track. Always, you know, she's so fiery. Of course, she's in a red unitard, but just in the best ways, she's great. Bomb's really fun. And Tugger, I mean, come on, Tugger's awesome. Look at that costume; it's so cool. You're like cats, but Simba, but cats. It's great.
Yeah. Okay, my last rapid fire question.
Okay.
I'm going to have to give a little backstory, I think, because I didn't know this existed, but there's a group of people that are on Tumblr that actually write as if they are one of the characters, and they like end up in situations. So it's like they're in normal everyday life and then they're interacting with each other. So I would write as one, you would write as one, and we'd kind of go back and forth on Tumblr making the scenario. So it's like a little bit of like almost live action of it. So I want to know, who would you want to write? Like, which character would you really want to be the writer for? Of like, if you're going to take control in just everyday scenarios and act as that particular cat, who would you want to write as?
Well, first off, can I just say that when you said Tumblr, I thought you said Tinder. But then when you continued to speak and you said what you said about going back and forth, I was like, well, this could also work on Tinder. So
Cats Tinder. Yeah.
Like, oh boy. Wow. Maybe. Okay. So maybe I would want to be Bustopher Jones because I secretly want to have a food blog.
I like that. That's good.
Maybe he like reviews restaurants and he kind of, you know, his hand in the foodie scene, and maybe he has like a food channel. Maybe he's got like his little kitty cat cameras all set up and he's, you know, making recipes and posting stuff and how he makes his different favorite foods.
That's fun. That's probably way more wholesome than actually what's happening on Tumblr. But I always said McCavity. I always said McCavity, yeah, because it's fun to write the villain. You know, if you're it'd be more fun to kind of write that storyline. But most important question, how can we find you on social media and stay in touch?
Well, sure. Yeah. Well, I have my website, of course, triciatanguy.com. And then everything else, Twitter, Instagram, it's all at Tricia Tanguy. And if you're wondering how I spell it without looking at it, it is, I'm a pale girl, but my last name is Tanguy, Tanguy. And I spelled Tricia with CIA, not SHA. Because I'm really Patricia.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here, humoring me, educating me. I loved hearing your theory. It's definitely not one I've heard, but I like it. It's like very educational, timely of what's going on, and kind of it really fits. But it also makes Grizabella the right choice, and I don't like that.
Oh. Well, it's so hard. Again, it was such an honor to walk in her shoes and to literally fill that iconic space. So it's kind of like, okay, I got to justify every step of the way. So how could I think otherwise, I guess? But
amazing. And thanks everyone else for listening to this episode with Tricia Tanguy and The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. To follow along, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Wrong Cat Died, or check out our website, thewrongcatdied.com.